Big shout out to today's video sponsor, Linsoul. Check out their fantastic deals in the links in the video description. Samsung's Galaxy S21 FE is about 18 months old now and can be had on eBay for just £300, which poses the question, is it worth buying in 2023? How does it hold up versus the competition? And should you care? Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas. Big thanks to Damien Wild for sending out today's subject matter. He's now the new host of Android Authority, so I'll leave his personal links in the video description, and also a big thanks to Linsoul for sponsoring today's content. Let's talk specs and availability. As I mentioned at the start, this thing can be had for £300 or less on eBay second hand. That's pretty affordable for most people, and I'd say the specs are really good for the money too. The S21 FE's spec sheet shows off a 6.4-inch 1080p 120Hz AMOLED screen, 6 to 8 gigs of RAM, a Snapdragon 888 or Exynos 2100, a 4500 mAh battery with 25W PD3 charging and 15W wireless charging, and 4 total cameras including a 12MP main, 8MP 3x tele, and a 32MP selfie shooter too. For £300 that is very reasonable, especially when you consider that this thing is going to get 2 more platform upgrades and a further set of software security patches. That sees you into 2025, which is a more than reasonable amount of time I think to have a phone that costs this much money. It's running Android 13 right now on One UI 5.1. It looks and feels like a fantastic operating system. As I've said in many a video, One UI is one of my favourite skins for Android. It's a nice, slick, clean interface with plenty of features like edge panels and one of the more complete camera apps in Android smartphones. Android 13 ran absolutely no dramas on this S21 FE review unit, even though it's the lesser 2100 Exynos model with 6GB of RAM versus the higher spec Snapdragon 888 with 8GB of RAM. Standard day-to-day browsing, Reddit, Discord, YouTube, Spotify, multitasking, gaming, all these things ran on the S21 FE absolutely fine with no hiccups or anything to speak of in that respect. I have to admit, the S21 FE's cheap casing doesn't feel amazing. It's also likely that if you buy yours used, the plastic back might be a little scratched. That said, I use a case on my smartphone which could mitigate these problems altogether, and if you're not fussed on it being a bit scratched up, you can get a better deal on the device. I will say that the metal rail felt pretty sturdy. The phone feels well made despite that plastic back. It has IP68 water and dust resistance, which is very handy if you live in a country like the UK where it rains a lot. One of the S21 FE's standout qualities in my opinion is its display. Of course, a 6.4-inch 1080p panel in 2023 doesn't sound all that impressive, but it is 120Hz, which is nice and about what you'd expect from an upper mid-range phone these days. You already know Samsung has put a great panel in this thing. They make some of the best displays, let alone smartphone displays, on the planet, and so this thing has a nice panel in it. It gets very bright, it's very punchy, it's very clear, it's very fluid thanks to the 120Hz refresh rate. What I would say differentiates this from the nicer panels in the flagship smartphones. One, obviously the resolution. Those are Quad HD, this is full HD plus, but it also doesn't get quite as bright outdoors. Now we've had a sunny spell here in the UK, and out there it was fine, but it wasn't as readable as sort of the panels on the S20 series Ultras, which get much brighter, and I found is actually makes a bigger difference than the increase in resolution that you would normally get going from a standard FE to an Ultra. The punch hole being in the middle is my preferred location due to symmetry, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this actually. Let me know in the comments, do you prefer the punch hole in the center? And another thing that I wanted to come up with is that I actually prefer a distinct physical punch hole if it means the selfie camera's better quality. I know Samsung's put out some in-display cameras in their foldables. They just don't work very well despite the fact that obviously you don't have that punch hole on the display. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. The Galaxy S21 FE's battery life was never exceptional or incredible. It managed to last me a full day, which was very good, but I don't do all that much on my smartphone. 2 to 3 hours of screen on time with a further 3 hours of sort of background Spotify playing through the 3.5mm adapter that I have through the USB-C port, so screen is off for that. Around half brightness, maybe a little bit higher when I'm out and a little bit less when I'm indoors. And mostly Wi-Fi usage with a little bit of 4G chucked in there as well. and about 30 minutes of Bluetooth streaming. So a fairly comprehensive day, but the most I'm really doing in terms of performance is browsing through Reddit. It's not watching videos, playing games, or creating content or anything like that. A particularly difficult thing for the S21 FE is it's competing in the same price category as a used Pixel 6, which I think is one of the best used smartphones you can buy at the moment. And one of the main areas of smartphones these days is the cameras, and of course the Pixel 6 is going to wipe the floor with the S21 FE, but I really wanted to talk about it in the context of sort of versatility. The FE has an extra lens, gives you a bit more versatility, and some do like the Samsung color science, but it's not the best camera experience. As a whole, the S21 FE captures a lot of colour and boosts said colour to create images that pop. There's also a lot of contrast here, which I'm definitely partial to, but I would say that the colour is just a bit too much. It could be the bright lighting conditions or something to do with the display, but I have checked these on multiple different displays, and overall they just don't look as natural as Google's ones. I did also notice some denoising artifacts, specifically when using the ultra-wide, which looked rather ugly and not something you could really look past. Certainly not the most reliable point-and-shoot system, but given good lighting it was okay, and the computational photography modes were pretty decent, I have to say. They're good at subject separation, almost too good in some aspects, and is typically a trait with Samsung. You get more of a cutout than you do a smooth focus roll-off, which you would have from a real camera with real depth of field. So, you know, it's kind of, if you like that look, it's fine, but it's not very natural, and I would say actually that the portrait mode can look quite fake at times. But overall, the S21 FE is a good smartphone. It's one I recommend. It's got good software, good performance, okay battery life, I suppose, and okay cameras if you can deal with some of the pitfalls, but its standout qualities are definitely its display, its performance, and its software. Compared to the Pixel 6 feels nicer, it takes better photos, and I think I prefer the software skin these days, but that does come down to personal preference. It doesn't have as nice a screen. It's probably not quite as quick, I would say, day to day, just the zippiness of it. So the S21 FE gets my recommendation if you're after a phone like it. The Pixel 6 is a different kind of smartphone, so I recommend both, but for people who want different things, they can pick different versions. Links to everything will be in the video description. I want to thank Damien for sending out this smartphone for a review. It's great fun to look at the FEs. They're quite interesting smartphones. This one is pretty cool and I enjoyed using it. I think the one thing that really stood out to me again was just the display. It feels like a class above what you actually are paying for, which is quite cool. His links will be in the video description along with Linsoul and all of that. I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons for being continually supportive. And yeah, like, comment, do all that fun stuff. I've been Ryan Thomas and I'll catch you later. Cheers.